So good afternoon, everyone. I'm really glad and honored to participate to your seminar. I'm definitely not part of your industry, although I worked for it a long time ago. And I've been invited to come here and to give you a different perspective of your work. So I reviewed, before preparing this presentation, the available documentation. And when I was sitting there listening to all your debate, it gave me really a sense of, wow, they are now really building the technical concept, but there is still a long way to go. I mean, many questions that you were asking today were those that we had within Bank Contact when we were building the first mobile payment application in 2012. And meanwhile, a lot has happened. But I can sense that you still have some way to go before you get to the point where something is completely mature. And it was also what I sensed from the documentation, and it will be a bit what I will highlight today. So I will briefly cover what is EPI. You may have heard about it because it was in the news yesterday. So some of you may have seen one of our news paper speaking about EPI and recent evolution. I will cover one single example of combining payment and digital ID because that was a bit what I've been requested to show, and then to liaise a bit with the work that Global Platform is doing. I will dig into security and certification, which is part of my responsibilities since quite a number of years, but on the banking side. Is it? Yep. It's not moving. Voilà. No. Voilà. Quickly, so on EPIs, EPI stands for European Payment Initiative. It is an initiative coming from a number of large European banks, and it came from a vision, from an agreement between important people in those banks that something had to be done about payment in Europe. So it was clear since more than 20 years that European players were struggling with the fact that the market was fragmented, that a large part of the payment were actually operated by American or US companies, that also, and now that instant payment is existing across Europe, it was a bit sad that because of the way settlement is executed, around 200 billion euro are held in a transfer sink every day, meaning that it's a lot of money that is just sitting there for nothing. And instead, EPI wants to provide how to set up a unified payment system that will be the same across Europe, at least, that we want to put definitely the consumer in full control of what is happening. And I won't have the time to dig into it, but there is something very important in payment, is the consent, collecting the consent. And that particular consent is really the core of what EPI is proposing. And in essence, part of the project is also about bringing European capacities together to innovate at European level instead of seeing initiative conducted at country level. So EPI now, since yesterday, has been able to announce that we have now 16 very large banks behind the project. So a few more shareholders were announced yesterday. And we have announced yesterday or repeated yesterday that the intention is to launch at least in 3 core markets as of early next year. So in France, in Belgium, and in Germany. And that we definitely have the ambition to extend later on. Does it work? No, voilà. Quickly, the proposition of EPI on one side is to provide a payment wallet to the consumer, very rich with a lot of features, better than what you see today, but at least doing what you see today in local countries. And towards the merchant, the advantage of a pan-European solution handling all the complex payment type. Most local solutions are only covering some payment types, and the complex ones, such as hotel reservation, are generally not covered. And we intend to do that based on instant payments so that merchants would get paid nearly immediately, and providing also an interesting business model, which is one of your questions today. It's relevant for the discussion today to mention that EPI, I mean, it's a scheme. So that means that you have several layers that are stacked. And I can sense in all your discussion that somehow it's still something that is emerging in this digital ID initiative. So as a payment scheme, EPI has rulebook, sign membership contract with the bank, organize at legal level the complete solution, and then on top, we'll provide wallet and other components that are required to enable the acceptance and the issuing by the various players. And on top, also provide central processing capabilities that allow to interconnect everything. And I will skip the settlement because it's definitely not relevant for you. In this case, for EPI, we will have both that complex model where there will be a standalone EPI wallet, so branded EPI offered directly to the consumer. And on top, banks have the possibility to decide to integrate the payment features in their application, which makes my personal life a bit more complex because I'm responsible to security certify all that, and certifying all the bank app is a challenge in itself. A last bit of information about EPI, and then I dig into your topic. Just to mention it, we were part of the prototyping effort that ECB conducted last year. We were in charge of building a demonstrator covering post-payments, so providing elements showing how the payment app would work for the consumer, how the acceptance size would be implemented, and then implementing also backend solution that would be connected to the ECB implementation. So all that has been done, has been delivered. It was, from our perspective, a success. And we are staying in contact with ECB with the clear intention to participate to the next step of that project. Now, digging into digital ID, if I take it from our perspective, because it was the request, how does EPI look at it? First, EPI has already announced publicly that if there would be a European digital ID wallet, and if that would be technically possible, EPI intends to analyze and most probably implement that functionality in our wallet, at least in the standalone wallet. For the bank, it's to be seen how and if it could be done. And on top of that, looking at it, obviously, so that would mean that we need to implement all the mandatory features that are described in the documentation. But looking at it, I see two angles. Obviously, if that product would exist and independently of an offering from EPI, we on payment side would beneficiate from a number of opportunities because, and you are probably all aware of that, it would enable much faster collection of consumer data at the time of enrollment. It would help a lot for the parties that are responsible for know your customer processes. So EPI is in that case because we will have a role of payment initiation service provider. But generally for the bank, and everyone knows that here, capturing national ID and other critical data in a secure way, that's definitely a pain point today, and probably the European Digital ID wallet will help a lot. On top of that, we have specific need, which is about collecting specific data that are used for specific use. So in particular, if I look at the EPI wallet, we expect to have an AML responsibility, anti-money laundering. And if you take that example, so that wallet will allow consumer to register different accounts from different banks. And EPI would have a responsibility of being able to check at AML level if transactions initiated from the different accounts do not pass a certain alert threshold, meaning that the only way to detect that is to make sure that we capture not only the fact that the consumer is customer with a bank, but we need to be able to identify the person itself so that we can detect that the person hold different accounts in different banks, and that implies to get access to the national ID. And as a payment service provider, if we would have the chance to issue a product containing both payment features and the features proposed with the digital ID wallet, and clearly the immediate use case that come top of mind are car rental, where you can at the same time associate the payment and providing the ID and providing the details of the driver license to the car rental company. For those who have already rented a car, you can quickly spend 30 minutes at the counter doing all the registration process. And here, if everything is combined in one single wallet, you can imagine that within a few seconds, that problem is solved. Hotel reservation, it's a bit the same. When you arrive at the hotel having reserved, you have already paid, and then you are always asked to show your ID card, and then, or you have to fill in a paper form, and all that is tedious, taking time. Again, the digital ID offers the possibility to speed up all those processes. I would like to share a real case, life case example. Suppose that you just bought that piece of land that is sitting behind your house, and where your dream is to build a vineyard. And obviously that's great, but you need to do significant work to achieve that. And one of the things that you have to do, you may not know it, but it's to change probably a bit how the land is arranged, meaning that you will end up for several work to hire a bulldozer. So let's analyze what is happening if you want to get or to rent that bulldozer. First, we want to do it fast, so we will use the wallet on the phone. It's very expensive, that thing, so you have to think about paying a very significant deposit, count 3,000 € for a significant bulldozer. The transaction will be complex because you will do the reservation, so some money has to be put there available, and then, depending on how many days you will rent the thing, you will pay more or less money. And at the end, when you give it back, final amount will be computed, and there the payment system will have to support the fact that a certain amount is captured, which will probably correspond to part of that has been authorized. And if it happens that you keep the bulldozer for too long, then the bulldozer rental company will have to introduce several authorization requests to each time make sure that the additional days are covered by the payment system. And you may know that if you rent that kind of thing, you have to provide some assurance to the rental company that they know who you are, because they want to be sure that they will get it back. That machine costs at least 50K if it's not new. If it's new, it's even much more expensive. And therefore, they want to collect your ID card. They want to have some certainty that they know your real address, because they want to limit their own risk. So if we look at that use case, what do we see? First, and it is probably generally the case when you want to associate ID and payment, all the transactions that came to my mind is always complex transactions. So you shouldn't be thinking about combining payment and ID and thinking, okay, I can just do a P2P and I'm happy and it's great and I will put value on the market. That doesn't seem to be the case if I look at it from a professional perspective. Where you bring value is when you get to the point where you have complex type of transaction, which means that you need a very advanced scheme behind. It cannot just be done like that and you hope that everything is fine. It will be always a complex story to bring together ID and payment. So I explain what we need to combine. You need to have the authorization, the several authorization, the capture at the end. It's all very complex to do. In this particular case, we deal with high amount, meaning that you have high risk of fraud. And you need to have those transactions covered somehow. No one will be willing to take risk in the whole ecosystem. There is clear risk of dispute. Suppose that I do not agree with the rental fee at the end because it wasn't clear. It will be a lot of money. If when you bring back something that you rented, there is always a discussion, was there damage and how much should it be covered? Imagine that something is broken in that machine, a lot of money is at stake. So that means that not only you need to be able to handle complex transactions, but on top, you need to be able to handle dispute, which is in itself a very complex thing, especially when you have a complex ecosystem like the one you're looking for. And then we have the obvious risk of fraud. What if the bulldozer does not return? What if the rental company is not so honest and abuse the fact that they reserved a lot of money on my account and that they finally capture it while they shouldn't be doing it? If I take it from the ID angle, it's also interesting because as a rental company or as a consumer, I want trust. So the whole ecosystem that you are busy building needs to be built in such a way that people, and it's not only, it's been mentioned, security certification will provide trust. You need much more than that, trust me, to make sure that people do trust the system. And in particular, one of the key points is what happens in case of problem. If you don't have proper response to that, then there will be lack of trust. You need technical operability, which seems to be solved in your industry by something called harmonized command format and a number of APIs that have been defined, so that's good. You need legal proof. So as a merchant, if I get through that transaction an electronic thing that says this is the ID of the person who rented that bulldozer, and if the bulldozer doesn't come back, how do I go to court and show something to say, look, I had the ID of that person? Is there a way for me to go to the court with that data and use it to sustain my claim? So I guess that's where the authorities will jump in and make sure that the legal framework is in place so that whatever is produced by that wallet has proper valid, proper legal validity and can therefore be used in that context. Then, and that's really the thing that I missed in all the documentation I went through is, and what happens in case of problem? Who is liable? If the wallet gave to the rental company a delivery address stating it's with Mr. Huque, but actually there was a hacker, someone managed to insert a different address. It's not even possibly the fault of the wallet per se, but the attack could have been performed at another place in your ecosystem. Oops. But the resulting situation is the bulldozer is gone, 50K. Who is going to pay for it? Is it the merchant? Too bad for you, there was a problem. Is it the service provider of the merchant? Is it the party delivering the wallet? Is it the party who has been hacked and who provided the address stating it's the right address, but actually was not? How do you manage that, especially if there is no contract amongst all those parties? So that's the kind of things that will need to be solved, I guess, and it's not easy to do, easy at all to do. Yeah, I will skip those points for the sake of time. So just a few comments on security and certification, as I'm a bit experienced in that. It's probably no surprise to say to you that it's challenging to ensure the mobile phone security. So I've been handling payment wallet for the last 12 years. And I was responsible for the certification at BankContact, and I still have a role similar at EPI. I think at BankContact, we had something between 800 and 900 different type of phones used by the application. The more you rely on the hardware, the more you rely on it, the more doubt and risk you take because you don't know who is the manufacturer, you have no clue if it has been certified. So for a payment application, you can still survive and say, I do everything as it has been said. Say it's cloud-based, it looks like cloud and HSM, and then something is happening locally just to ping the central system and ensure that authentication is done. But if you look into using TEE, secure element, and so on, then whoever operates the wallet needs strong assurance that on every single device where that thing is installed, it's really the chip that has been certified. It's really the code of the TEE that has been certified that is installed. And if a manufacturer located anywhere claim it is, but actually deploy hardware that is not certified, you go towards risk, and again, then who is responsible and liable for it? So the security certification of the phone, or ensuring that the phone is secure, is really a big problem. And somehow, when reading the white paper of Global Platform, obviously it makes sense that something could be built using the Global Platform technology to solve part of that problem. I don't think that it's solving everything. There is much more to it than that, but at least it's going in the right direction, and there is a party that is already busy doing something for the chips that are deployed on the phone, and there must be a way to sign something in the chip. There are cryptography or ways to ensure, and with signing the proper paperwork with the chip provider, with the manufacturer, there could be a way to get to the point where, from the perspective of people providing the wallet, there is really assurance that what is on each single phone can be relied. Okay, I have to close. Requirement felt like European authorities have definitely still some work to do to make sure that everyone is aligned on a number of requirements, in particular for security. So which security standard are you going to use, especially if it's not only about the phone or the chip, but if you think about the wider system with the HSM and the cloud application and everything. I'm busy with that. Trust me, it's highly complex, and you cannot say there are standards readily available to cover my case, but also yours. And certification clearly is the way to go if we want to provide assurance to the ecosystem. Central certification, I guess, partially handled by the state or through the state or on behalf of the state. It's really a critical step. It will be extremely complex to set up. I don't know if someone from the authorities is in the room, but unless you have started, you should start thinking about it, because I'm doing exactly right now this thing for something that is similar, the payment ecosystem that I've described. I have less stringent security goals than you have, and it is already a nightmare. Last few questions. So how you trust, access to the hardware that was mentioned in the debate right before. We in the payment industry have suffered from the access to the NFC chip. You know that. There is a clear risk that if we say it has to be, the digital ID must rely on SC or TEE, you will end up with some player having a prominent position, wondering if they could make money out of it. So that is really a key question in this story. Someone should ask the question, who is liable? And the whole ecosystem, how it's built with so many parties, you will have liability issues. The bulldozer example showed it. And I think that I've covered the rest already. Yeah. And last question, authorities, please do a favor to this industry. Make sure that you start the work on certification, because you do have some work to do. Voilà.